Welcome to the Sounds of Encouragement, the place for musicians and music teachers to find support and encouragement to help you stay motivated, creative, and moving forward in what you do best. I'm Melissa Slocum, your host and number one encourager. I currently live in the Atlanta, Georgia area and have my own thriving studio teaching piano to all ages in person and online. I also help other teachers use student goal-based learning and differentiated instruction to increase motivation in their students and increase retention rates in their studios. You can learn more at www.musiclessonpathways.com. Thank you for tuning in to Sounds of Encouragement. Don't forget to subscribe so you get notified of future episodes. Enjoy the following episode. Don't forget to keep listening at the end and be sure to check out all the links in the comments or show notes. As always, I'm here for you, so you can be there for those who need you the most. Reach out to me at soundoфencouragement@gmail.com and let me know how I can better support and encourage you. Hey friends, Melissa here, your number one encourager. Thanks for joining me for this episode about joy. It is December 2020. We are almost all the way through another year. And I was doing some research about a month ago for another project, a freelance writing project about joy was the topic I was assigned. And as I did my research and started writing a little bit about this topic, I thought we had to do an episode for this particular podcast for Sounds of Encouragement about joy because I just had to share some of the great information and articles that I found. So here we go. Let's dive into a little bit about joy. And I'm going to read to you, share with you some excerpts from different research articles. And some of the articles and things that I mention as I talk, I will link up for you in the show notes as well. So one of the things that I learned in doing this research about joy is we are actually hardwired as human beings to experience joy. Some people feel like they'll never be joyful. They'll never have or know true joy. And yet, definitely from a lot of research, not just that I did, but other researchers have done, it indicates that we actually are created for joy and the experience of joy. Designer, author, and joy researcher Ingrid Fattel-Lee says, "Joy isn't some superfluous extra. It's directly connected to our fundamental instinct for survival. On the most basic level, the drive toward joy is the drive toward life." Ooh. Let me share a couple bits of that again. That joy is directly connected to our fundamental instinct for survival. I never would have imagined that joy was an inherent part of survival, but it is. This is what she found. And that the drive toward joy is the drive toward life. What an interesting way to encapsulate that idea of striving toward joy. So she had shared, because she was a designer and interested in architecture and design, she had studied the relationship between physical objects and the emotions that they evoke in people. And so when you go into a room that is very colorful and is very pleasing and visually very attractive and visually very beautiful, whatever that means to you, that is connected to feelings of joy. And that's where a lot of her research had been done. So I just wanted to reflect for a minute on 2020. And, a lot of people have been stuck at home. They've been quarantined. They've been stuck in their homes with their family. And early on, a lot of people did. What was one of the first things that people did? They ran out to Home Depot. They ran out to Lowe's. They ran out to whatever big box store. And they got stuff to do home improvement. Why? Because they wanted to improve their environments. If they were stuck there, yes, they had more time. But in a lot of cases, it also was about changing their home environment to enjoy it more, for it to be more aesthetically pleasing. So if you did that, I want to know, what did you do during lockdown to improve your space? So one of the things that's connected to joy and understanding how we can create more joy is understanding how we interact in the spaces in which we live and in which we work. Also, a lot that makes sense too for people who find joy in the outdoors and in the natural settings. And think about how oftentimes a walk in the woods or paddling on a quiet lake or hiking or rock climbing, that those kinds of outdoor experiences can also create joy because our eyes, our senses, our ears, they sense beauty. Our nose can smell the different smells that for us might be beautiful or calming. So really fascinating perspective about how our physical spaces and how even the objects that we use can contribute to or help create a sense of joy in our lives. The other thing that I wanted to share is a really wonderful research study done with Richard Davidson, professor of psychology at the University of Wisconsin. He was interviewed in 2005 for Time magazine about the biology of joy. And this is interesting. This might sound like, okay, we already know this, but listen, he says, in studying how the brain responds to different events, his team found that, quote, mild to moderate doses of negative experience are beneficial. The reason, he believes, is that stressful events give us practice at bouncing back from unpleasant emotions. They're like an exercise to strengthen our happiness muscles or a vaccination against melancholy. Think about that for just a moment. I know that in 2020, with a global pandemic, an economic downturn, and so many other just hurdles to clear, a lot of people have had trouble finding any kind of joy. However, even small moments of disappointment, small moments of negativity have helped all of us in life along the way to persevere. They have, in a way, like he says, inoculated us against slipping into that constant state of depression or melancholy. Now, this obviously isn't true for all individuals because there are very real and very diagnosable conditions of depression and anxiety and, states of mental, capacity, mental illness that, are so tied to depression and where people really are not capable without outside help to experience happiness. However, for people who don't have mental illness, who don't deal with depression, who don't deal with some of those chemical imbalances in the brain and hormonal imbalances, there is a sense in the research that those who experience those mild or moderate and brief periods of discomfort, of emotional suffering, if you will, or disappointment, are what help us get through all of life. Times like 2020. Because we know we've done it in the past, even for a brief period, and so we're maybe more able to do it in the future. Now, 2020 has been quite unique in that there's been no let up. And so I would argue that, while that research is helpful to know for us, 2020 has been a completely different animal in terms of being able to operate long-term in a state of lockdown or in a state of isolation, and that even the most positive of people in 2020 have definitely struggled at times. The other thing I wanted to share is, actually, before I do that, let me share this. I'm going to share this because this was a game changer for me. I'm going to share this other quote. This is from Dr. Keltner, professor of psychology at UC Berkeley, who maintains that embracing all of our emotions is healthy. Okay, right, we understand that. But he went on to reference the Darwin theory of survival of the fittest, emphasizing that, quote, Darwin also said sympathy was our strongest instinct, and those communities that have the most sympathetic members will flourish and do the best. So out of that comes this other theory of survival of the kindest. I'm letting that sink in. Survival of the kindest. Wow. Our path forward, friends, is through kindness and figuring out how to create more joy in the world. And I know a lot of you are struggling right now. But I want to share some ideas about how to help you create more joy. First of all, remember that you were created for joy. That all of us as human beings were created to experience joy. And so whatever the source for you of faith or a higher being is in your life, that's the source that created joy in you. You were built, we were hardwired to experience joy. We were created for it. And so I encourage you, not only just this month as we have holidays approaching, but in this next month and the coming year, to hold on to those moments of joy that you might find yourself in, and to linger in those joyful times. Whether it's opening presents on a Christmas morning that brings you joy, whether it's a great game night with family at home, whether it's a Zoom call with family across the country or across the world, whatever brings you joy, spend time in that moment, linger in that. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. And thirdly, know that you can create more joy. And again, we'll talk more about that. You can create it by sharing it. And that's this idea that, even in terms of evolution, not only were we created for joy as beings throughout evolution, but we were created to linger in it, to share it. Okay. So let me move on to this other article, which I've also linked in the show notes. This is 7 ways to experience more joy. And I'm going to share a lot of stuff here. This episode's going to run a little bit longer than normal, but it's just chock full of great stuff. So 7 ways to experience more joy. Number 1, imagine happiness. Okay. We can all do this. You can do it right now. Any activity, I'm quoting from the article here, any activity when performed repetitively changes the structure of the brain, but even repeatedly imagining an activity has an impact on the neural structure. So you don't even have to do the happy activity, the joyful activity, just imagining it can change the neural pathways in your brain. I love that. Picture yourself, the article says, in a situation with people you really like or engaged in an activity that gives you a lot of pleasure. By actively imagining feelings of happiness or recalling happy experiences, you can help encourage changes in your brain that will predispose you to creating more real-life joy in your daily experiences. Just by imagining happiness and joy, we create more of it. We're more predisposed. I want to say dispossessed. We're predisposed to more of it. Number 2, memorize happiness in your body. Remember all of those times when you felt joy and what were the physical sensations, the sights, the sounds, the smells, the touches. What were the feelings? And when you remember those physical sensations in your body, how that joyful moment or that wonderful walk through the woods or that wonderful day at the beach, wherever you were, whatever those experiences were, those memories also have physical manifestations associated with them. We can recall the sense, we can recall the visual, the sights, we can recall the sounds. And the article says, whenever you are experiencing a moment of joy or contentment, notice the feelings in your body and the state of your mind, and that you can intensify that sensation. Some psychologists call this memorizing the feeling, and you can develop a strong sensory memory of an experience if you want to. So again, when you have those experiences of joy in the next month, in the next week, in the next year, how can you solidify that physically in your body through your senses so that you can recall it and go back to it? Number 3, reframe your fate positively. You know, friends, this has been a hard thing to do in 2020. It's very hard to see anything good coming, especially I think at certain moments during the year. If you were surrounded by grief or loss, if you lost a job, if you lost a loved one, if life turned completely and you were not able to, turn things around, if you just stayed in that state of uncertainty, it's been really hard to reframe a positive fate for oneself. But there is research about being able to do this, and people who are able to do this reframing, not very hard, but if you're able to do it, here's one way to go about it. Choose a task. I'm reading from the article here. Choose a task or situation in your life that feels like an obligatory burden. Try changing your I have to story to an I get to story and see if you arrive at a different perspective. For example, now I get to take out the garbage. Could create an opportunity for feeling grateful for the ability to use legs or your trash pickup service instead of just feeling annoyed. So what is it, friends, that you find burdensome? What is it that you find annoying? Even a small thing, right? How can we reframe it? I do this actually a lot when I'm doing dishes. I don't particularly like having to hand wash pots and pans or other things, but I use that time to meditate on how grateful I am for clean water, because so many parts of the world don't have it. How grateful I am to have enough food for our family, because so many don't have. And then it makes that task not only go faster, but I'm actually grateful for the opportunity to do that, to wash dishes. Now, you may not be able to do this with some of the bigger things, but definitely we can do it with the small things in life. And if we can do it for the small things, maybe we can gradually work up to some of the bigger things. Number 4, strategically diffuse worry. All right, raise your hand if you worry, okay? I expect everybody pretty much right now to be raising their hands. A lot of people, a lot of us, especially moms, right? We worry. We worry about our kids. We worry about our jobs. We worry about our spouses. We worry about our parents. We worry, right? I get it. But listen to this. This is an excerpt from a March 2000 conversation between the Dalai Lama and a group of neuroscientists and scholars who the Dalai Lama suggested a useful technique for heading off anxious episodes. And the person that is being quoted here is Matthew Ricard, PhD, a geneticist and Buddhist monk. And so the conversation that's being quoted is between him and the Dalai Lama. And he states, quote, "The basic way to intervene when a troubling thought arises is to use a technique called staring back. When a thought arises, instead of reacting, we need to watch it and look back at its source. As we stare at it, its apparent solidity begins to melt away, and that thought will vanish without giving birth to a chain of thoughts. The point is not to try and block the arising thoughts, that is not possible anyway, but to not let them invade our mind. We need to do this again and again because we are not used to dealing with thoughts in this way. Finally, a time will come when thoughts come and go like a bird passing through the sky without leaving a trace." Wouldn't it be amazing to be able to take those worrisome thoughts that come to our minds and let them fade away or pass like a bird flying through the sky without us giving it another thought? Wow, I'm going to be practicing staring back quite a bit. I encourage you to actually rewind that and listen to that again. This is just amazing. Number 5, experience the bliss of blamelessness. The premise here, everyone makes mistakes. we all screw up. We all do. We put our foot in our mouth. We make a mistake. We do the wrong thing. We say the wrong thing. We show up late. Whatever. We all make mistakes. But it's important to learn, quote, how to let go of blame for others and for ourselves. Resentment consumes energy, even when we're entitled to it. So even if you're trying to let go if you're trying to let go of blame towards someone else, try becoming curious. We're going to replace blame with being curious. Curious about a hurtful experience instead of taking it personally. Taking a more impersonal view of disappointments can reveal their hidden gifts. Wow, do I need to get better at that? Right? When someone makes a hurtful comment, when we have a disappointing experience, instead of wallowing in that blame and in that disappointment, how can we be curious? And how can we experience the bliss of blamelessness? Love that. Number 6, let go of feeling busy. Okay, well, yeah, that's a big one. We all tend to get busy. We all tend to push things like taking time for ourselves to the last of the list. And one of the things that we can do, let me just quote this article, one of the primary obstacles to joy is the feeling of being too busy. Yeah, I experienced that. The suggestion is during very busy scheduled time periods, giving ourselves mini breaks or just taking those few moments, between tasks, if you're a music teacher, between lessons, just to sit and breathe, close your eyes, right? Maybe do number 1. Go back to number 1. Imagine a happy moment. Imagine yourself happy and take that break. Number 7, see the good in others. Oh yeah, this is a big one. Let me quote again from the article here. There are a lot of reasons to feel joy observing other people if we're looking for the best in them. So true. And I think in 2020, especially, oh boy, the internet, right? Whew. It's so easy to see the worst and to assume the worst in people and the comments they make in different platforms online, right? And we even call people trolls. I mean, I get it, but wow. So instead, can we look for the best in people? Quote, it allows trust to develop between people who scarcely know each other. Try this for 1 week. Take on the practice of looking for the good in everyone you come into contact with. See in each person the desire to be safe, accepted, happy, and loved. Even if you know someone's shortcomings, keep looking for the positive qualities, creativity, humor, a caring heart, intelligence, any and all positive qualities you might admire. Notice what this effect has on you and how you feel towards others and on your interactions with them. What if we saw the people that we disagree with the most and that we think we have the least in common with and the people who annoy us the most? What if we looked at them with different eyes, starting today? What if we saw them as also deserving of joy and love and peace in the same way that we want those things? What if we looked for the best qualities in them instead of always trying to confirm our worst suspicions about them? Wouldn't that change the world? Wouldn't that change our community? Wouldn't that contribute to that idea I mentioned at the very beginning about Darwin, about sympathy, right? And that kindness is what we need to create in our communities, not badgering people, not assuming the worst, not calling everybody stupid, not talking about people as idiots, but really looking for and talking about and sharing the best in each of us, in each person that we see. Okay. So those are the 7 things. I've linked the article. Hopefully you'll be able to find that because I am putting this like in 3 different places in my house. I'm just putting it up. It's going on the dinner table. It's in my bathroom. It's in my bedroom. I'm probably putting it up in my studio as well. I need to share one more thing because we not only can create joy, but I want to share this quote because this was also research that was done in a study published in 2012 about sharing positive experiences verbally. Nathaniel Lambert and colleagues at Brigham Young University concluded, quote, "The bottom line, sharing our joy increases joy. Telling people about our happiness has far greater benefits than just remembering it or writing it down for yourselves or for ourselves." Unquote. You know, a lot of us have done gratitude journals over the years, and it's great to write that stuff down. But it is so much more powerful to verbally share that joy. So what I want you to try and do is do that this week. Do that this month. I want you to verbally share. You know, it's funny because the article that I wrote, the reason I was doing all this research, I was doing an issue on joy. And in one of the sections of what I had put together, I noted that, you know, there's a reason in a lot of churches, before prayer times, someone will say, you know, we want to share joys and concerns, or are there any joys and concerns? Why? Because we're not just sharing the concerns, the bad stuff, right? We're also wanting to celebrate together. We want to share the joys. And when we share those joys verbally, especially in a community, whether it's, you know, you share joys within your neighborhood, you know, or the people you work with, right? Or in your family, when you share those things verbally, there's a different kind of energy that happens, and that joy has the opportunity to sort of take on a life of its own. So instead of just writing down your gratitudes, you know, in a gratitude journal, or instead of just writing down what gives you joy, and I do this too, I write it down. Instead of just doing that, one of the things that happens is that if you share it, you actually can create and spread more joy. Think about that. How will you create and spread more joy in this next season, in this next month, in this next year? Because wow, I cannot tell you how much I was impacted by some of this research, especially this quote about kindness. The communities that have the most sympathetic members will flourish and do the best. The most sympathetic. I hope you're hearing that. And the rest of that is, the rest of that quote is, so out of that comes this other theory of survival of the kindest. I'll tell you what, friends, we've survived 2020, but I want to know how you came out. Was it survival of the whatever, or was it survival of the kindest? Sounds of Encouragement is about survival of the kindest. I'm here to encourage you, to support you, to help you in any way, shape, or form that I can. So if you are a musician, by the way, did I quote this other study? I have to circle back around to one thing, because if you are a piano teacher in particular, I want you to think back to that Imagine Happiness, #1, right? Listen to this. I forgot to quote this, but you're going to love this. Maybe. Quote, researchers at Harvard Medical School demonstrated, okay, the impact of imagining an activity on neural structure. So let me go back to the article here. So this was Harvard Medical, demonstrated this idea with an experiment where they asked one group to play a 5-finger exercise on the piano over the course of a week. A comparison group was asked to merely imagine moving their fingers to play the same exercise. Though actively playing the exercise had a greater impact on brain structure than imagining it, by the end of the week, the same region of the brain in both groups had been significantly affected. All right, friends, time to get moving forward in joy. So remember, you were created for joy. I want you to Spend a little extra time in those joyful moments. Don't move on so quickly to something else. And then make sure that you're sharing joy. Not just writing a gratitude journal, but actually sharing joy, because that creates more joy in the world. Oh, I could say so much on this whole topic, and on each one of these I could talk for an hour, but I'm not going to. So I'm going to leave it there. Remember, friends, I'm here for you, so you be there for those who need you. All right? Until next time, be joyful. Take care. Hey friends, you made it to the bonus track. So here's the first Noel. My son, who plays French horn, asked if he could do something with sounds of encouragement. He wanted to play a little something. And so I thought, great, we'll do it as a duet. So here's him on French horn and me on piano. This is just a traditional arrangement, simple with piano accompaniment. Not a big deal, but we hope that this brings you joy and peace and many blessings as we head into the new year. Happy holidays, and thanks for listening.